Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Rob Tracz. Rob guides entrepreneurs and driven professionals to break free from stagnation and optimize both personal and professional success without burnout. His approach emphasizes holistic performance, physical vitality, mindful habits, restful recovery, and a supportive community as essential to sustainable achievement. Rob Tracz, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's go. Hey everybody, it's Quinn Magnuson with EOR, the Effort Over Results podcast. And today I am thrilled to welcome Rob Tracz, a high-performance coach, speaker, and founder of TAPS Training. With a unique blend of strength conditioning education, entrepreneurial high-performance coaching, Rob helps ambitious professionals build resilience, optimize their energy, and reach their full potential without burning out. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, Quinn, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, it's taken us a while to get together. Obviously, you've got a very busy schedule. My wife and I were just in the process of leaving the city and the home that we had lived in for 5 decades, and now we're out in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. And so we finally got our schedules figured out. I'm very happy to be here today with you. I want to start here. The journey is fascinating, obviously your journey, but you're still young. And to me, it seems like everybody's younger these days. What first sparked that transition? Give us some background too, though. Like give us a little bit of where it all started. But I want to understand the transition from athlete to performance coach, and then eventually to working with entrepreneurs through TAPS and prime performance coaching. But let's start in your childhood days, young athlete, and then how we work through all the way through today.
Yeah, awesome. But so I guess before I even became an athlete, I was just this kind of dweeby little video game kind of nerd. It was totally out of shape, favorite things to do was just watch TV, play video games, and eat ice cream. And as a lot of little kids, I guess, and I didn't like sports. I didn't really gravitate towards sports. It was like, oh, why do I have to put in effort if I could just sit here and not put in effort and still have fun? But my parents ended up getting divorced when I was like 7, 8-ish. And as a young kid, it can be difficult to make friends at pretty much any age. Eventually, when we landed in this small town, upstate New York, where we eventually called home, it was this one pal of mine, one of my best friends still to this day. His name is Sean Caswell. He was also like me. He was into Pokemon cards and video games and all this fun stuff, but his dad also was very athletic and pushed Sean to play in sports, and he had a great background. So then Sean's dad also encouraged me to come out for sports. And Sean's dad was actually the youth football coach. And that very first day of practice, I learned 2 really important lessons. The first lesson is that you can't wear jeans to football practice. And the second thing is that I'd realized all the more athletic, in shape, stronger, competitive athletes on the youth football team seemed to get through the warm-up with relative ease. They knew all the plays, they knew everybody else on the team. And what I could do was I could memorize the warm-up routine. I started doing like the jumping jacks and the push-ups, the small things at home by myself. And as I continued to do that, I started to get a little bit stronger. I started to grow a little bit, and I started to lean into that discomfort from pushing myself physically. So that really became the gateway for my personal development journey. And I began seeing a lot of success, a lot more friends, a lot more things. My grades were great. That led to playing, I was a 3-sport varsity captain in high school. I was a captain on the wrestling team as a freshman for all 4 years in lacrosse and football. So that bled into leadership type qualities because I became a role model and a leader for the team, and sports was always that foundation. Then going into college, playing college football for my freshman year, and then shifting over to rugby, a totally new sport that I had never played before. Helping our rugby team go on to win a state championship and then compete in the national level, and then becoming captain of the rugby team just the second year I've ever played. And then that kept breeding more about how important it is to be in the gym and how important it is to grind and how important it is to show up for your teammates. And after finishing up undergrad, I didn't have any more sports to play. So for me, I was still looking for that family, still looking for that camaraderie, still looking for that collective challenge. And that's where I found coaching. It just made it super easy studying kinesiology in undergrad, which is the study of human movement, then eventually going on to grad school and getting a master's in exercise science and concentration and performance enhancement. So that gave me that ability or that avenue to continue to coach and be in that athletic setting. And then eventually finding my way transitioning out of strength and conditioning into this high performance coaching that I do now.
I want to go back to something you said about putting in the extra time, the extra effort. Obviously resulted in positive things. I grew up athletic too. Well, let's put it this way. I don't know how athletic I was, but I certainly loved sports, and so I did a lot of it as a kid. But it took me until now to really recognize subconsciously, or sorry, consciously, what putting in effort does. That it's not all about the results. Hence the title of the business of what I'm trying to profess here about effort over results is that it's the effort that matters. You can't control the results, right? So as a young kid growing up in sports, you had said that you recognize that, oh, when I put this effort in, when I put the extra time in, I get invited to more parties, better things happen. Um, do you think there's a point in time in a person's life where they start to recognize consciously that effort is really the answer to everything? It's not about chasing the result and being obsessed with the result, but it's about that consistent daily routine, that consistent daily effort that we put in that really results in getting us to where we want to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting question
Mm.
because if I think about it, I don't know if there's a specific time or period where you kind of gain that consciousness or awareness of, hey, if I continue to put this in, then I will continue to see better results or at least improvements. And I think that's why a lot of people don't try enough things because they don't you would think that we would know, like, okay, you work hard at this and it should yield some kind of results, but it's uncomfortable. And if you don't know what you're doing, it makes it even scarier and harder. So, for example, I just started golfing relatively recently and I'm pretty terrible at it, but I'm still having fun with it. And I know, hey, this is going to take me a little while until I get at least decent and understanding, getting smooth, at least with understanding how to play. But then the same thing happened with my speaking journey and same thing with transitioning from strength and conditioning into high performance coaching. I have such a diverse experience, I guess I would say, with different challenges of throughout my life. So I know that there's a grind. I know that it is going to hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable. But if I keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, I should start to see something kind of starting to develop and gaining some of that skill, I guess.
Let's go back to you had mentioned the deep roots in exercise science, getting your master's, and then obviously having a great knowledge of strength training. How has that changed? And I realize you're still young, and I'm not being disrespectful when I say that, but when it comes to life experience, I know that obviously when I went to university at Washington State to play football, like the strength training in 1989, back in the 1900s, like I like to say, is obviously completely different than when my son attended the University of Arizona on a football scholarship this past 5 years. I was blown away by how exercise science and strength training has advanced so much in that 30 years. And how finite the details are. What have you seen, even just in the short time from getting your degree, going through exercise science, and then today, in terms of the growth and the knowledge of people in general? Because I think people in general, because of social media, because of people like you, the strength trainers, we're just gaining knowledge almost by osmosis by being on social media. But what is the biggest change you've seen in those years between getting your degree and now?
Well, for me personally, it's just the understanding that you don't know what you don't know. So without any kind of experience getting through it, it's alarming how quickly things do change and how fast things do evolve. And I remember like after undergrad, I remember driving home, packed up my car and I was driving back home and I'm like, wow, that's it. I know everything there is to know about exercise science. I'm at the top of the world only to start my internship like 2 weeks later to realize that I really don't know anything. And then I have to like kind of start back up the whole journey of being a learner and getting the new experiences and going through the like the discomfort again and the awkwardness phase. And then the same thing with grad school. And then after grad school, I was making sure that I was reading the Journal of Strength and Conditioning at least one study per day, per like every week, pretty much. So then by the end of the month, I'd finish that journal and then the new one would come out and I'd be like, all right, right back to this. And you just keep learning as much as you can because so much stuff changes so quickly. Even what we're talking about now might be contradicted later down the road with different studies. And I think as we continue to gather more information and experience as a society as a whole for all the different kinds of schools of thought, I think that's where we begin to have better data points and we can understand so much more. Because when we create a lot of these studies and we hold a lot of these like strategies for training or performance, it's still individualized. And at the end of the day, it's really about applying what you're learning and figuring out what really fits well for you as the individual.
Mm. That's a great transition and segue to my next question. And you had talked about when you work with clients, and this could be clients in business or clients in the gym, the different attitudes, morning person, evening person, when are they at their peak energy during the day, and so forth. I want to give you almost like a case study scenario, Rob, and I want you to walk me through how you would handle these two types of clients. You have two clients. Let's just give them both, same age, both male, both come in, but one hard worker, just tireless, like consistently putting the effort nonstop, but doesn't get the results they want. Okay. Then you have client two who kind of can just show up and they're good at everything and they're strong and they're athletic and there's nothing's really a challenge for them. And then to the point where you're almost like, why are you even here? But you have almost a dichotomy of clients where one is just blessed with lots of God-given talent, athletic ability, strength. The other one, it's there and they keep working at it and they keep working at it, but they're just not seeing the results that they can get. What is the messaging to either one of those? And how do you work them towards where they want to be?
Yeah, I think the first step really is to kind of figure out what it is that's driving both of the individuals, because I think understanding what's their underlying drive or motivation, I think that's going to dictate how we communicate to them. So, for example, if the really hardworking individual is more of like a legacy kind of drive and he's not necessarily as driven by achievements and status and such, maybe we tailor our conversation around like continuously pushing forward, like, hey, look at this hard work that you're doing because you're showing up as a role model for a lot of other individuals. And there's ways of kind of going about it. And then I think it's important to start just staying around that motivator, that what is it that's really driving them, and then kind of following through with that. The language that you use is going to be determined from that itself.
For sure. And what I was getting at is obviously what we preach here at EOR, and we say effort over results. We're not saying effort not results. So a lot of people mistake what our brand means in terms of like, well, you don't care about getting results, you don't want a goal set. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that we need to stop focusing so minutely and almost microscopically on the result and the goal we're aiming for all the time, because we lose sight. It tends to cause a bit of defeat in us when we don't get the result, but we fail to look at all the hard work we put in. And we need to recognize that daily effort. And so here's a good example. My daughter just got back in the gym. She was a university athlete, but just got back in the gym after COVID kind of knocked her off her feet, gained weight, really wasn't really motivated. Just got back in the gym 6 months ago. And I was just like, I was just so proud of her for just getting back to the gym. That's an effort part, right? I said, I don't care what results you get. The fact that you've gone from not being in the gym to being in the gym is a massive step. And then even when when you finally do get back into the gym, it's like, well, I didn't have a very good leg day. And I'm like, you were there, weren't you? Like, we got to start, people need to start recognizing the efforts they put in daily and the constant work they put in, even if they don't get results. It's like people in weight loss, they want to get down from, let's say, 200 to 180, and they only get to 187 and they're kind of plateau. And it's like, yeah, but the amount of work you put in to get to 187 is incredible. But people focus so obsessively on the result that they tend to lose sight of celebrating the small wins and the daily work. And I believe that, all you can do is control your attitude and effort, right? I mean, that's cliche. But do you see that in a lot of the clients you work with where, they'll put in a ton of work, they won't get the result, and they basically just go, well, what's the point of all this? Like, have you ever had clients like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. All the time in strength and conditioning and personal training too with weight loss clients, and they're so fixed on that number, right? Like, oh, how do we get there? How do we get there? But then like you said, like they're failing to see all of the early morning sessions, late night sessions, the makeup sessions, etc. So I love hearing that about your daughter. So congrats to her because that's just awesome getting back into the swing of things. And to take it away from the gym, it reminds me of one of my clients, Jeffrey, who came to me originally looking to lose a little bit of weight. And then we kind of digging back, discovering why it was so difficult for him to kind of start going to the gym. And we found out that it was a toxic work environment and his superior and coworkers, and they were causing this chain reaction of emotions every day. So then it would be hard for him to get to the gym after work. And then it would make it even harder to get there in the morning. And then what we ended up doing was working through, and he started getting consistent with the gym before going to work.
Mm,
And that started to build up a little bit of resilience and some confidence and really building that discipline and so on, so on. And then when we kind of continued to dig, as he started getting more consistent, he realized that he needed to leave that work environment. It would be ultimately the best for him, but it was also scary because he'd been there for so long, almost 15 years in the same spot. And began starting to apply for other positions elsewhere. And then that became terrifying because now he's going on these interviews and working on these different things. And he's talking to me, he's like, Rob, man, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, I can't handle this. Another rejection for this other job that I really wanted. I'm doomed to stay at this place for another 15, 30 years. I'm never going to be able to get this done. And I'm like, dude, look how far you've already came. You've gone to more 5 a.m. workouts than I think other people in this entire town. Like, you're getting up, you're going there, you're getting out there early, and you're sticking to it. Rain, shine, snow, you're still getting there. Think of that when you're going into a lot of these job applications and looking at these rejections as an opportunity to learn and figuring out how you can show up a little bit better the next time. And don't be discouraged because you got another no. Look at it as it wasn't a right fit for that time. And now you're going to move into the next one with your head up high with a new sense of purpose and self. And he kept pushing. And then he came to me again. He's like, dude, I finally got that yes. I was like, whoa, this is incredible. He goes, yeah, but the problem is I got 2 yeses. So which job do I take? And I'm like, dude, that's a great question to have. Like, let's
great
figure
problem to
this
have.
one
Yeah.
out. So this guy is like the perfect example for coaching and how one thing leads into another. And that consistency of just showing up, putting that effort and shifting it off of the outcome and onto the effort that you can put in really makes a huge difference.
Man, can I put that on a poster here in our offices? That is exactly what effort over results is all about. When people focus on the results and goal and just the goal microscopically, they tend to become more dejected, more frustrated. They don't feel like they're getting anywhere. And then then they ignore the amount of work that they put in. But you gotta kind of shake them and say, listen, take a look at the work that you've done, right? So that leads me to my next question, Rob, I realize it's a bit of a rhetorical question because we both know the answer to this, but exercise science and being a personal trainer, but how much does psychology bleed into your relationship with your clients? Because this is more than just them showing up to 5 a.m. and you taking them through a workout. Like this becomes much more personal. But there's a psychology there. Even some of the new weight loss apps like Noom, they're founded on the concept of psychology, not just better nutrition or more exercise. And I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here, but I find that people who struggle, let's say with weight loss, who struggle with not being able to be consistent in certain efforts, depending on what they're trying to achieve, it has to do with childhood trauma. It has to do with their work environment. It has to do with things outside of the gym, outside of what they're trying to accomplish, that's really holding them back, right? So in your work with your clients, how often do you see that, and how often are you having to dig deep into the psychology of the person, not just their strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so I mean, it's huge. We know that. Like it is a huge component of it. And I think of it like how going to school and learning a lot about the body and understanding how to write programs and different exercises and strategies to create different adaptations on the body. That's great and that's a good foundation. But the problem, that's only half the coin, right? That's the understanding the structure of the change, creating change. But the other side is that psychology that you're talking about. So without the psychology, that's where as like young strength and conditioning coaches or personal trainers even, they're like, "Oh, I have this perfect program. My client's still not getting the results though." They're trying to follow it, but they're not really staying consistent or they're not motivated. And that's where the other side falls short because if you don't have the psychology, if you don't understand how to communicate with your clients or how to communicate the process or the reasoning why you're doing certain different things, it makes it that much harder to get buy-in and create that momentum to kind of move them forward. So a lot of what I'm doing now with a lot of my performance coaching is, yeah, there's a lot of strategies on how to optimize your day or how to build a little bit of confidence on this or how to improve your communication skills. But if I can't communicate and if I can't connect with them on a psychological level and understanding their background and digging a little bit deeper into why they're doing it and how it changes or how to create more behavioral change, they're not going to see the results and then they're not going to create the momentum that they're looking for with the projects that they're working on.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Quinn Magnuson. Welcome to the EOR podcast, the show for leaders, high performers, and the secrets to grit, growth, and greatness. I want to ask you something. Are you an organization looking to build a rock-solid strategy that will grow your people and end up in increased productivity and profitability? Then I invite you to start by going over to our website, effortoverresults.com, and book your free strategy call directly with me. No obligation, no bots or sticky email campaigns, just a friendly one-to-one call so I can learn more about you and your team goals. So if you're ready to get real, go over to effortoverresults.com, book your free call today. And now let's get back to the show. Let's talk about comfort and discomfort and what your philosophy is on that, because I realize it's probably not going to be anything new, but I think it's just a message everyone needs to hear.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I was going through a period where I was kind of reflecting on, hey, wow, things are going pretty smoothly. I've been consistently onboarding new people. I've been landing multiple speaking gigs. I'm doing this going on here. And I was kind of sitting back and I was like, wow, things are going pretty smooth for me lately. And I was like, I need to find a way to kind of challenge myself a little bit more, add a little bit of discomfort into my life. And I know it's really silly, but I always do a cold blast at the end of my shower just to kind of push a little bit. But I decided, you know what? I'm going to start doing the cold blast before and get into the shower cold when it's freezing and just jumping straight in warm. And I started doing that for a little while just to add a little bit more challenge into my life to experience that discomfort and really seeing, hey, can I push through this or can I tough it out for at least what I said I was going to do? And I think it's always good to make sure that we are finding ways to kind of challenge ourselves. And are you familiar with the term misogi?
No, talk,
It's
say
like
more.
it's a Japanese term of really just kind of pushing yourself really hard at the end of the year. It's meant to be a extremely difficult physical challenge where
Mm.
you're unsure of whether or not you're going to be able to succeed on this. But the point is, you push yourself really hard to the point of exhaustion where you have this conversation with your self-consciously and you get to the point where you have to have that difficult conversation of like, hey, are we going to make it through this? Can we keep pushing? Or like, are we going to call it quits and kind of turn it in? And I love doing that. And my birthday's in December, so I try to push and do that every year. It's a great way to start the year fresh. So whether you are successful or not, you
Yeah.
know where your boundaries are. And a few years ago, I gave up running once I quit rugby and I
Is this the
retired.
100 miles in 24 hours story?
So I
Yeah,
pushed
okay.
myself to do that, and I was I tried doing the math and I was like, yeah, this is easy. And this was even before I had read about David Goggins and such. So I
Right?
was
Yeah.
like, all right, yeah, let me do this. And I set out to really run as far as I could for as long as I could. And in that 24-hour period, I should say, well, I push. I ran the first 16 miles with relative ease, didn't even have any water. I came inside as the night was kind of coming and I hit the treadmill. And I think the temperature shift really caused the swelling to kind of kick up. And now all of a sudden my legs are like twice the size. My shins are squishy. So it was like alarming for me that my shin bone was kind of squishy.
Oh,
And I kept running, pounding on the treadmill on the inside. And I got to the point where I was like, all right, I got to call it quits for the night. This is difficult. I got to go put my feet up. I couldn't even get into the shower. I just laid on the floor and just put my legs in the air. I slept for 3 hours and I got back up and went right back down to the treadmill and started pushing. I was struggling to maintain a zero 0.5 on the treadmill and I wouldn't let myself hold on. So I'm just kind of like shuffling my body across. Eventually in the morning, I got back up to like a 4. Then I built myself up to a 7. And then I just kind of grinded between 3.5 and 7 miles per hour on the treadmill for the remainder of the 24-hour period. And once the time expired, I successfully completed 60 or 53 miles. So that was pretty great. But also, I fell significantly short of my 100-mile goal that I thought I was going to be able to achieve. And that was a great lesson for me to going into the new year. Like, hey, it's okay to fail at certain things, like as long as you're learning. Like, hey, if I want to try to run 100 miles, I got to put a little more effort into my training. I can't just roll off the couch and get right into it. And also prioritizing and saying, hey, how far can I push myself? And I paid for that too. It took me a long time to get my solidity back in my shins.
mm, gosh. Well, I mean, I literally probably have never run a 1 mile in one single setting, despite my athletic background. Like running was, and when you're over 250 pounds or close to 300 pounds, running's just not in your repertoire. Um, I want to move shift to working with business people because I'm sure you do personal training with people who are also leaders, C-suite executives that are looking to obviously improve physically. One of the books that really affected me positively, 2 years ago, I picked up Your Oxygen Mask First by Kevin Lawrence. And I don't know if you've read it, but basically it espouses the concept that people in leadership positions, so that could be a CEO, it could be a manager, it could be the coach of a team, anyone who's leading a group of people, but business owners in particular, they need to take care of themselves. So proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper exercise, whatever that looks like for them to be at their best to lead. But there are far too, and I've experienced this, I've worked with far too many CEOs and business owners that think that working 18 and 20-hour days is how they show their commitment to the position, how they show their employees that, look, I'm not stopping, so you can't stop. And the book basically kind of flips that on its head and says, no, you need to take time for yourself to re-energize, to have something other than work to think about, no matter what it is. And I want to get your take on that because I know you probably work with your clients that are in high, positions, leaders, CEOs, and so forth, that are just nonstop workaholics, and even getting them to commit to a program with you is tough because they're like, you know what, hey Rob, can't make it today, I've got something at work I got to take care of. Burnout, let's talk about that. Some of the clients you work with, it's a huge issue, burnout. What is your message to people who will put work over personal health and wellness?
Yeah, I mean, the message to them is good luck because it's not going to last too long. And I mean, my background in sports, it was always push a little bit harder, grit a little bit more,
Yep.
and you'll be able to work your way through. And when I was in strength and conditioning, building my book of business up, I was to the point where I was working essentially 16 training sessions in a day. So 7 days a week. And I did that for about 3 years. And I just kept telling myself, I'll just push a little bit more, figuring out some other way to create some more income. But in my performance coaching, that's the first principle, is about that resilience. And the very first thing we do is we review the different inputs and outputs that we're doing. How much and how hard are we pushing physically, cognitively? How are we feeling emotionally? We start with that. And it's the same thing with like personal training and strength and conditioning too. You get a little bit of a background, you understand where your client has been, what they're currently doing, what their experience is. Because if somebody's coming in and they're like, yeah, I've been training for a marathon 24/7, like I need to kind of shift out of this and get into something else, you don't want to just keep hammering them back into it. So a lot of it comes down to that awareness in the beginning of like, okay, where are you at? What have you been doing? And how do we get you back to kind of like a baseline so that we can get into like the flow state a little bit easier, so we can avoid these burnout stages or this overwork exhaustion that does creep in. But we have to take a strategic approach here. How can we shift what we're doing and still being productive? And what kind of strategies can bring us back into like the flow state? Because if we keep grinding, that burnout's inevitable.
Yeah, the burnout thing, and it's funny because I had a discussion on burnout with, in fact, I think it was someone who you just guested on your show, Emily Erstad, and we talked about burnout, and we both agreed that at least in a work situation, burnout often comes from bad work environment or bad leadership, not from the job itself. Right. And people tend to burn out because when we talk about work life balance, if you love what you do, and for example, you, Rob, I'm sure you love what you do, you don't find you have a lot of burnout because you could work 18 hours a day because of what you do and how you love what you do, right? So I think burnout comes more from environment. It comes more from the people around you that are kind of pulling you down. It comes from bad leadership in workspaces. So how do you get entrepreneurs, but just people in general? What's one thing you would tell people to do daily that would help them avoid, maybe not completely, but help them avoid that burnout?
Yeah, I would just ask to try to reflect a little more consciously. Whether it's like a full on reflection kind of practice like journaling, meditation or something, or it's just, hey, let me just pause for a second. How am I actually feeling today? Because the burnout really, it's easy to get into or start to get into kind of burnout when we're not being present, right? We're either worrying about things that had already happened, or we're too much worrying about things that are coming up, because that's what kind of motivates and pushes us to that next thing. Like, oh, I've got this deadline in 2 weeks. I got to make sure that this gets done. I got to make sure I call those people. So the list of to-dos always constantly piles up. And then the check-in for yourself becomes second because there's so many other things to do. But if we can just pause even for a second and be like, hey, how am I actually doing today? Am I okay? Am I tired? And even just checking in with yourself and just identifying that is so much better than just running through it. Like, it's okay to just sit and be like, yeah, I am really tired right now. And I feel like that is so much more, because that'll at least put it in your subconscious of like, hey, maybe I do need to slow things down a little bit. So when are stacking more things up, it's like, hey, maybe I should actually kind of take a break, because I feel like the past couple of days I have been telling myself I'm really exhausted. Like maybe I should kind of hold off on that last meeting that I have. Maybe I should just take a few seconds for myself to do something that I enjoy, or spend some time with somebody I enjoy,
Yeah.
because that'll charge me back up.
Yeah. I wonder if, and let's go down this path for a second. I think people who are those workaholics, so to speak, and just constantly never take that break, and they feel like they're showing weakness almost when, for business owners especially, they're showing weakness when they aren't working nonstop and showing their employees that they're working nonstop, or even just in life, showing their friends, showing their family that look how hard I'm working, whatever. I believe that's imposter syndrome. A lot of it is because imposter syndrome basically says to you, am I a fraud? Have I gotten to where I am because of, it was a fluke? It was luck. Yeah, I put in a lot of hard work, but I really don't think I necessarily deserve to be here, or people are going to find out that I'm not as good as I, project myself to be. Let's talk about imposter syndrome for a second. Your take on it, where you've seen it. Has it happened to you?
Yeah, I think it happens to everybody at some stage of their life. And I think for me personally, I think it really came in because of how I was valuing myself. And I was wearing my long work hours and crazy work schedule almost like a badge of honor. And as I started to kind of scale my book of business up, and that became me seeking that attention, that praise, and instead of just the financial, which was kind of like motivating me, but then it was also like, oh, I'm too busy to hang out, or I'm too busy to go to Thanksgiving. I'm working, all this other things. And I thought that was what I was looking for, the attention that I was kind of seeking, but that kind of started pushing a lot of people away. And I think that value comes off from there. I think if a younger version of myself, if I had reflected a little bit more on the work and the different things that I was actually doing and putting in the process of things instead of just focusing on the outcome, I think that would have helped me kind of remember, like, okay, I am worthy of being here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think imposter syndrome does happen to everybody. It's happened to me. It still happens to me. I'd like to take that in a positive light, though, that sometimes imposter syndrome is really the thing that does drive us. It is the thing that does help us become successful. But like you said earlier, and what I think everybody needs to understand is that you need to sometimes take a deep breath, step back, take some time for yourself. Really understand where your priorities are, and is this making you a better person, or are you just doing this to impress somebody else, right? I want to talk about TAPS and prime performance coaching because now we kind of come full circle, and we're talking about you working with clients. Let's talk about TAPS, Tracy Athletic Performance Systems, and then prime performance coaching. Let's talk about those two entities, what it brings to the table, what's the philosophy behind it, and what do your clients experience when they're working with you?
Yeah, so TAPS training is the like personal training, sports performance side of my business. Then I transitioning, learning the value of, hey, I gotta be a better communicator. I need to connect with people more. I need to understand the psychological side of coaching, and then kind of working through what I want to be doing as I continue to grow as a person. So too did the coaching. And then instead of just forgetting about my strength and conditioning background, that's where I created the prime performance. Prime performance at the base level is momentum mentoring for people with their projects and side hustles and small businesses that they're trying to generate that first steps or so.
Okay. So let's start to wrap things up here, Rob. Let's talk about daily rituals and routines. We started the show talking about just putting in the effort, not worrying about the results because we can't control that. All we can control is the input. The output really is left up to the environment around us, to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it. But really, it's about the effort that we put in. But what are daily rituals or routines for you?
Yeah, so I'm the kind of person who was into that bucket of like, yeah, having a solid morning routine is going to be the key to success. And through grad school, I would always get up super early. And from there, that's kind of where it was easy transition for me into strength and conditioning. It's easy for me to get up at 3 a.m. to prep for my 5 a.m., 4 a.m. clients, and then it's easy to stack my day up with all these wins early on. And as I was transitioning out of strength and conditioning, I understood the importance of challenging myself, but I also understood the importance of reflection and all these other things and goal setting and forward thinking on a lot of stuff. So I would wake up, I would write my goals down. Then I do gratitude practice, a little bit of meditation, get a small little workout in to get my day rolling, get my body rolling. Then I would start my actual day, whether it's clients or getting into my actual training sessions and such. And that worked really well for me for a long time until I started traveling and teaching workshops and speaking. And then I wasn't able to get that full routine in. And then one of my mentors, Brett Bartholomew, he was joking. He's like, hey, man, that's great. But if you can't get that in and if you can't still get your day successful and get the things done that you need to get done, then you're just becoming a slave to your routine instead of using it to benefit or amplify whatever you're doing. So now my routine recently has been pretty much just a short 10-minute meditation somewhere throughout the day. I still get it up pretty early, around 4:30 in the morning most days, kind of get the ball rolling, get planning with like creative work, and then making sure that I get that short little bit of meditation in because that does give me that pause that we were talking about before. That allows me to kind of check in with myself. And I think that gives me the perspective of looking at everything around me and taking the situations with a grain of salt and making sure like, hey, I can move, I can adapt, I can change. Maybe I am pushing a little bit. It depends on you and your situation. So whatever your routine is or whatever you feel like you might be needing, you probably should be putting a little bit more into that. And because my life is kind of calming down, it's not as chaotic with a lot of different projects, I probably won't need to be meditating quite as frequently. And maybe I'll shift into something a little bit more creative or flow state to get me kind of building into something new once the new projects kind of set themselves up. And so your question about the items in the food in the fridge,
Yeah, right, right.
for me, it's always got to have the eggs, and that's another kind of topic too. Like I used to
Oh,
crush like 10 to 12 eggs a day, and then
yeah.
my mom's a nurse, and she's like, "Oh, your cholesterol is going to be terrible," and I was like, "Well, let me test this out first." And I still crush a lot of eggs, ground turkey, and water too,
Yeah.
keeping that in there.
I think eggs, and once again, maybe in 20 years we'll find out something different. I'll be dead by then. But it's like, I think eggs are like literally the perfect food.
Yeah.
You know what? Like you said, Rob, you said it best. Find what works for you. Do your own research. And that's the beautiful thing about podcasts like this, about the internet, about, just having so much information at our fingertips, is that now you can actually make good decisions. But looking ahead, let's talk about you and what's next for your work. Taps, Prime Performance, Surviving the Side Hustle, your own podcast. Any upcoming launches or philosophies you want to share? And let's promote you and get you out there.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of going around speaking at different conferences. Going to be co-authoring a book relatively soon, and as that stuff's kind of coming out and growing, that's pretty fun. Always got a lot of different workshops going on between public speaking and conflict resolution, communication skills, and such. Two great organizations I'd love to just kind of like throw out there is Warm Heart Life and Art of Coaching. Those I work with, and they're immensely beneficial to my production and my growth as an individual. So anybody who's interested in a lot of things that I've been talking about, I would highly recommend checking out those two organizations. And then also myself with my projects, my one-on-one coaching and my small group mastermind, where essentially we go into a call every week asking reflection questions. At the very least, it's a moment to pause and reflect and build a little bit towards each other, and working and helping each other kind of grow together at the same time. So that momentum mastermind is really quickly developing into a fun group of individuals, just kind of sharing the ups and the downs, because as we were talking about social media before and influencers, it's really easy to find everyone's great days, but it's something refreshing to kind of connect with others who are going through some difficult times, and maybe they are running into a wall with a certain project, and being able to kind of bounce ideas and asking these like reflection questions and kind of seeing like the layers kind of peel back on each other. And that is like that camaraderie, that teamwork, the same stuff that I was looking for in Pop Warner football with my jeans the first day of practice. But now it's just evolved into new people and new problems, and it's a really cool thing.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for diving into performance, resilience, sustainable growth with us. If you'd like to learn more, my audience, find Rob at Rob Tracz and Tracz, TRACZ.com, robtrazy.com, and on Instagram at Rob Tracz. Explore Prime Performance Coaching, TAPS training programs online. You'll find all the links in the show notes today. Thanks for tuning in, and here's to playing and winning the game of life with an EOR mentality. Everybody have a great day.